Well, who am I? I'm a security puke. I do firewalls, but I kind of do a little bit of forensics by hobby and do a little of the corporate stuff for my company, going after the sales guy that deleted all the stuff in mail that he had sent to his new employer and all that fun stuff. I kind of do this because I'm a little upset with the industry itself. On the forensic side of things, we're just not making enough advances. It kind of reminds me of where firewalls were maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. All we had was packet filters. It's about where we are today with forensics, as far as I'm concerned. So again, if you're considering a career in computer forensics, don't quit your day job just yet. What we're going to touch on here is we'll talk a little bit about encryption, plausible deniability. We're going to touch on Windows Vista. I'm certainly not a Windows Vista expert, but you do need to be concerned with Windows Vista if you're moving into forensics. Talk a little bit about steganography, primarily the hype surrounding it. Talk a little bit about different methodologies people are using today for hiding pictures. Of course, we have to talk about disk wiping. I also need to touch on, known good signatures. There's a number of databases out there that promote the use of known good and known bad signatures, but it's getting kind of messy. And of course, you can't talk about anti-forensics without talking about Vincent Liu and the Metasploit anti-forensics toolkit. We'll talk a little bit about advanced anti-forensics, some of the tools that are available, and a little bit more about some Linux tools for hiding data. Now, if you're a forensic expert, we'll say, encryption has to be your biggest nightmare. We have made some advances within the field. If you use the Access Data product, FTK, they have what's referred to as PRTK for recovering passwords, Password Recovery Toolkit. They've actually put hooks into that to work with rainbow tables. So if you're trying to recover passwords for Microsoft product, it's child's play today. It's a matter of just looking it up in the database, etc. There are a number of good EFS tools. The bonehead ended up sending his PC into IT to have it cleaned up because it's running slow and they screw up EFS files and you've got to do the recovery. There are some pretty good tools out there for doing that. But the bottom line is it's only a matter of time before the bad guys really start using what's available out there today with encryption to start covering their tracks. We had some issues here about a year or so ago where, with some of the tools, if you created an encrypted partition within an encrypted partition, you could still, statistically prove, in fact, that was another hidden partition within that partition. That kind of has gone away. They've dramatically improved the way they do that. And essentially, as we're showing graphically here, you take TrueCrypt, you create one hidden partition, you create a second partition within that partition. Law enforcement grabs you, you give up the password for the first partition. They have no idea the second one's even there. So you keep the good stuff in the second partition. Keep the lightweight stuff in that first primary partition. Again, a year ago, it wasn't that difficult to detect that, in fact, someone had done that. Today, it's nearly impossible. Now, TrueCrypt is also a little bit stealthy. None of the settings are stored in the registry. What I like about it, what's kind of cool here, is it uses a key file rather than using a crypto key. So it becomes a choice of which of the 70,000 plus files on the PC did the bad guy use as his crypto key, which I thought was pretty neat. Again, they've moved to LRW to replace CRW, which essentially eliminates statistical detection of random data within the image. Again, it's real tough to find that someone has actually created a second store within that image itself. And of course, creating it, the second image can also be mounted as a separate disk. Now, mind you, nothing that I'm talking about here today is new. It's all out on the web. I mean, I got myself stung here a couple of years ago. I did some live hacking demos using tools I found on the net, and the CISSP community kind of went up in arms and, you can't talk about this stuff. It got pretty frightening. And now I did a presentation similar to this for the Cybercrime Summit in Atlanta about a month ago, and they actually restricted it to law enforcement only. I mean, you can't talk about this stuff publicly. Well, any idiot that can, type in Google can find this stuff. So, I'm sure I'm going to get email when I get back to South Florida next week, but such is life. We got to fix this. So, moving forward. If you don't think TrueCrypt is being widely used, think again. Bottom line here is, as of a month ago, nearly 700,000 people have downloaded it. On average, 1,000 people a day are grabbing copies of this stuff. And this is just an outrageously good program. If you want to get real creative, you're, of course, I'm sure, familiar with BART-PE. Create an XP disk for BART-PE with the software on it. You can then deploy the partitions, the hidden encrypted partitions, without leaving any trace whatsoever on the PC. I mean, nothing at all. There is no footprint whatsoever on the PC that you're running it. So it's a pretty neat way of doing it. Now we talk a little bit about Vista. This is getting kind of interesting. I was over in the UK about 2 weeks ago, and there's a lot of talk about Vista. Thankfully, though, the whole TPM bit is only going to be used on 2 versions, the Enterprise version, and then they've got this other version that sits up above Enterprise that just kind of has everything kludged into it. But the bottom line here is they're actually using a hardware crypto chip on the motherboard itself to store the private keys. The bad guy can then put his public key on a token, he can put it on a USB key, etc., which is going to make it virtually impossible for someone to be able to break that, the key itself. Now, combining that with full volume encryption, I mean, all bets are off. I mean, there is simply no way that someone who's used Windows Vista Enterprise and has implemented full volume encryption, you're just not going to get to that drive. It's not going to happen. I mean, that's kind of scary. It's so scary to some people in the UK, the government was seeding a story about Windows building in a back door to allow law enforcement to still get at the key so they could decrypt the drive to run their forensic analysis on it. Windows immediately came out and put out this big press release about there's no way in hell we're going to allow a backdoor in Windows. Now, fortunately for the community at large, it really requires no effort from Microsoft to provide a backdoor into Windows. Statistically here, roughly 25% of exploits against Windows since 2003 provided system access. So chances are it will be there. And surely we can use some of the 20% or so still yet unpatched Windows vulnerabilities to help us get there. I just thought that was kind of neat, Microsoft making the statement that we're never going to allow a backdoor in Windows. Okay. If you're looking at other sources for free on-the-fly encryption, man, they're all over the place on the web. I'm going to make a copy of the presentation available, to the conference host. Surely he can put it somewhere where you can download it so you don't have to write down the links and stuff that are going to be coming up here. But there are just tons and tons of freely downloadable software you can pick up on the web for doing on-the-fly encryption. Now, steganography, I kind of get a chuckle out of this because the law enforcement community kind of got all up in arms about steganography. I mean, Al-Qaeda is going to hide their commands for their next attack inside a porno image or something on the web, and we need to be on top of this. It just gets a bit outrageous. You can go out and download a copy of Stego. I mean, it's freely downloadable. I believe they have a version that also has an encryption part that goes along with it where you can encrypt the data before you store it in the image. You got to pay for it to get that. But just to play around with it, I grabbed it. It was kind of fun, but somewhat meaningless. There are a number of programs out there that will look at frequency counts within images to try to determine if, in fact, it possibly contains data. Now, Outguess was put out there to essentially try to outguess that. By keeping track of frequency counts, they try to keep it a little bit more in line to make the data seem a little bit more covert, we'll say. Tons of other tools freely downloadable on the web if you want to play around with steganography. Again, it's kind of neat. I just don't see it being used to do anything malicious. There was actually a couple of years ago, somebody went out on Usenet and did a survey, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. This is Steg Detect. Again, looks at the data itself, the randomness of the data, to try to determine if, in fact, a specific tool was used, because they all leave some form of a pattern. in the data to try to basically, let you know that possibly steganography was involved with the image. Man, I got to tell you, this is more prone to error than Christ, IDS was about 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, the false positives from this are just absolutely huge. Everybody remember these images? Anybody remember these images? Guy gets out on ABC, steganography is going to destroy the world. Here, look at this image. Embedded within that image, hell, I've got airplanes. Okay? I mean, it was pretty wild. It was all hype, though. I mean, again, getting back to the whole Usenet bit, these guys went out and actually collected images on Usenet, roughly 1 million of them. They ran various tools against them to try to determine if, in fact, any of those images could, in fact, contain data hidden within the image. As you can see, roughly about 20,000 or so images came back as positive candidates. 20,000 out of 1 million, not a bad number. Again, this was done like 2 years ago. Looking at the total data here, they took the 20,000 or so suspicious images and they ran a dictionary attack against them. Used the dictionary with roughly 1.8 million words and phrases. Didn't find a single hidden message within the 20,000 or so that they tried to run it against. I mean, that's kind of eye-opening. So I personally believe that the hype that law enforcement's giving to steganography doesn't quite deserve all the attention and time it's getting. To date, from what I've seen on the web, I can't think of any case per se that's specifically mentions steganography as being used to hide the data. There's simply easier ways to do it.
Isn't that maybe just a sign of how far ahead steganographers are as opposed to steg analysts?
Possibly, but there's so many other easy ways to hide data. I mean, if what really got me was their whole insistence that, well, Al-Qaeda's using this, and they're going to issue their command for their next attack using steganography. The guy was up on stage talking about this on a conference, and I just can't believe it. Just cannot believe it. Marcus Rand's got a whole rant that goes along with that. I mean, it's great. He just rips it apart. But yeah, possibly, but personally, doubtful. Now, one of the tools I ran across, I've been buying hard drives on eBay for about 5 years now. You want to have some fun, learning forensics, go out to eBay, look for used hard drives. Now, when someone is selling lots of hard drives, chances are they're smart enough to have already wiped the drives. All right, they're selling them in bulk. You go for the guy that's selling 1 or 2 drives at a time. All right, doesn't have a history of selling drives. Chances are he grabbed it from a PC at work, etc. He's selling it. You're going to have some fun with it. I don't want to get into naming names and all that fun stuff because I'd really rather not have to pay the legal fees. So we'll just say that I got a hard drive that happened to belong to a Catholic priest from the Midwest. And I found a lot of instances of this program on his hard drive. Now, Access Data has this wonderful ability to generate word lists based on doing a full scan of the drive itself. You can also enter biographical data. So I was able to brute force some of these album manager files he had on the drive. Had it been kiddie porn I found, I probably would have had to have reported it, but in fact, he just had some wonderful porn that other priests had been sending to him. Just kind of interesting. It was fun reading some of the emails, too, because here's this guy that's been entrusted to counsel parishioners, and some of the emails he was writing to his parishioners was just pretty wild. So I've had a lot of fun with it. In fact, if anybody wants to buy some drives, I kind of got a few hundred I'd like to get rid of at this point, and some of them are quite fun. But getting to this program, what the guy did here is rather than, trying to hide data in pictures, he's hiding pictures within what looks like data. Scanning for headers on this drive won't find the pictures. All right? They're actually encapsulated within this, photo manager and somewhat encrypted, although rather poorly. So again, looking for the images, you simply won't find them. So you have to look for the tags for the file itself. Fortunately, I guess I should say, is most bad guys are pretty stupid. They wouldn't take the time to run a packer against this. They would simply have it on the drive. So somebody's going to be able to find instances of this program itself. And, it's going to be kind of rough to try to explain in court why, in fact, you're using this period if you're not going to give up the passwords.
Sorry, I have a question.
Sure.
What's a packer?
We'll get into that in just a second. Now, wiping. God, this stuff is getting good. I mean, I played around with Evidence Eliminator, God, maybe about 3 years or so ago. They didn't touch the MFT. They did a great job of wiping the file and wiping Slack, but from a forensic standpoint, all you had to do was look in the MFT, and there's the file name, file size, et cetera, et cetera. You knew that the guy had the images or whatever you were looking for at one time on that PC because it didn't touch MFT. Today, it touches everything. I mean, this stuff is really, really getting good. The only forensic software I'm aware of that even takes the time to tell who's operating it that something is going on with the MFT is Smart. You might know the guy who wrote Smart. His name is Andy Rosen. He originally wrote Guidance Software's product. They kind of had a parting of ways, and he put out his own Linux-based product called Smart. But he actually examines the MFT, and when he sees that a bunch of stuff is filled with zeros, there's a wipe, and there's gaps in data, he gives you a pop-up, hey, it looks like someone may have ran a wipe utility on this disk. Anyway, the capability of this stuff is just phenomenal today. I have another one I personally prefer, but this one is pretty cool. It's very well done. Looking at the specific capability of it, yes?
If you do a defrag after you do the wipe, would that get rid of the...
Not that I'm aware of. Not a defrag after running it. I think that you would still find garbage within it. But again, today they do in fact wipe within the MFT itself. It requires a reboot, but they do it.
But you're saying then you can see it because it's got all the garbage.
Well, not today. They're actually shifting stuff around and repacking it, I guess you'd say. It's real good. I mean, it's pretty hard to detect, very hard to detect. Just some of the not limited, but some of the massive capability within Evidence Eliminator itself. It's pretty expensive. I mean, it's not a cheap program. And it's funny because when you talk to law enforcement, they say, well, the bad guys aren't going to spend the money on this stuff. Well, actually, they are going to steal it. Because, I mean, it's funny. Anytime you find a tool that kind of does nefarious things being offered commercially, there's always cracks for it. I mean, loft crack, okay? Within days of releasing a new version, there's a new crack for it. That's just life. And for research purposes only, mind you, I'll always go out and download it. It's just to see if it works. I mean, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. So to think that the bad guys aren't going to use it because it costs money is crap. They are going to use it because they're going to get it for free. In fact, they're bad guys. They don't mind doing this kind of thing, all right? Now, the one I like to use is called CyberScrub. I don't like to use it because it's particularly good. I like to use it because there's an error that they've made in coding it, and when you take the trialware version and you delete it off of your PC, it doesn't delete it. It just blows away the trial portion of it, and you get to use it forever for free. So I use it on all my PCs, and no, I haven't alerted them to the bug yet because I'm enjoying using it. But again, this is incredibly powerful. It does a great job of cleaning up the drive, and it's really, really configurable. So if you want to be a little bit covert about the use, you can only tell it to go after specific things to wipe. You don't want to wipe everything. I mean, if every time you go to shut down your PC, you configure something to automatically wipe out all of your internet history and everything else, chances are somebody's going to figure out that maybe he's using a utility on this machine to clean it up every day after he uses it. With CyberScrub, it's fully user configurable. I mean, it's an incredible product. Get a chance, download it. There is a trial version out there. Now, it does go much deeper than others. I mean, with this program, you can go in and actually go in within the PST file and wipe deleted email. That's pretty cool. That's absolutely cool. Take a look at it yourself. It is very, very nice. And I just haven't found anything that goes quite as far or that's quite as configurable as this tool. And again, it's almost free. Actually, it's $29.95. But I'm one of those guys where years ago when copy protection was real big on software, I'd spend $5,000 on tools just to break a $30 program. It's for the sport of it. You guys remember the old, there was a card you could buy. It was a magnetic transition card. It would do magnetic transition copies of floppies. When they were burning the little laser burns on floppies to get the signature and all that crap. I had a $4,000 card that would do a magnetic transition copy. Cool, I could break a $30 program. It was great. Well, anyway, for $29.95, you too can purchase a copy of our Wipe and Clean. Does a very, very nice job, again, fully user configurable and pretty scary when you think about it from a forensics perspective. I mean, it's just going to blow away anything that you could have possibly wanted on that machine. And it's very difficult to detect it. In fact, it had been run because it truly does use random data for wipes. In fact, it's fully user configurable. You can choose the various DoD methodologies to use. It's got its own random wipe methodologies. I mean, it's a hell of a tool. Hell of a tool. Now, PGP. This was kind of interesting. Vinny found a little bug in PGP's wipe utility. It was about a year or so ago, where it wiped the file but didn't bother wiping the file slack, which was kind of interesting. And it's got a new problem today. It will go in and modify the MFT, but you've got to actually boot it from a CD with another copy of an operating system on it and then run it. I mean, how convenient is that? CyberScrub, a $29.95 program versus PGP, which is going to cost you some big bucks, requires a reboot, but you don't have to boot off another operating system to clean up the MFT. So PGP is still kind of out there in being able to really clean up a drive. If you're looking at wiping a drive, don't waste your time with PGP. Pick up one of the other utilities. It's much easier to use. I mean, Christ, I can't even figure out how to get PGP to reliably handle my email to date. Every time they come out with a new version, it takes me a month to get everything to work again, but such is life. Now, other good wiping utilities, SRM, DBAN, Necrofile, and of course, Trax Eraser Pro, all of which have downloadable versions you can grab off the internet. Just do a Google search for them. Now, signatures, whole other subject. We could spend an hour talking about signatures. Typically, in a forensics investigation, you would use signatures to literally get rid of all of those files that you don't care to look at, all right? Known good files. Somebody goes out, creates a full hash set for an entire volume of Microsoft install files for Windows XP. You run through it. If the hashes match, you automatically discount those files as being files you don't have to bother looking at. On the other side of that, there's also a number of known bad signature files out there. Hacking toolkits, et cetera, et cetera. Known bad files. You could explicitly go through the drive looking for those files. On the LE side of things, there are entire signature sets of known kiddie porn, where they'll actually go out and look through the drive to see if, in fact, any of these hashes exist. And I am personally all for having the ability to do that. I think it's great that they're finally getting their act together in that regard. Now, NIST used to provide a great set of known good signatures. It's about $90 a year. You get a complete set of CDs. They still haven't done DVDs, which is really foolish. But you get a full set of CDs every month, and it's a complete update to known good manufacturer signatures for their software. Problem kind of came into it, though, in that they started to also add into the library all of the known bad signatures. So now, instead of having a good set of signatures that you wanted to look at, it's also going to tag, unless you go in and configure yourself, the known bad stuff along with it. So now, instead of known good or known bad, they're just known, which is a bit of a problem. And I've tried talking to a few people with NIST about it, and they seem to feel that they're doing it right. They're government, so what the hell are you going to do? It's a bit of a mess. Now, Access Data, Forensic Toolkit, they've got a number of their own signatures, and they're also compatible with the NSRL, but they allow you to do a little bit more configuration here. If you look in the hash set window, you can literally click off what types of files you wish to generate alerts on. They've actually gone through the NSRL database, and it is broken down in a manner that you can do some light filtering with, and it allows you to pick and choose what you want to alert on. Ncase has a small collection themselves. It actually does a conversion to import the NSRL database, but it doesn't give you the granular control that you'll get with FTK. Now, signatures are kind of cool, but they're real easy to just eliminate as being a threat to your getting caught doing anything. It's really stupid. Again, this has to be a bad guy that's going to take the time to want to not go to jail. Okay? It's as simple as that. Using a basic hex editor, literally going in and changing a single character in the file, somewhere in the text, okay, blows away the signature. It no longer matches. Okay? It's that simple. Again, take the hex editor, find a bit of text over here, changed, as I did, it was the word this, I changed it to this. MD5 no longer matches. All right? It's not going to alert on that particular file. And we'll talk about a tool in a few minutes that's just going to blow your minds on how much it can do with this. Now, exec packers. What exec packers do basically is allow you to change the signature of the file by literally compressing it. All right? It attaches itself to the file. When you then execute that file, it automatically unpacks it and then runs the file. It's kind of like what Fortinet used to hide all that GPL code they didn't want people knowing they were using on their firewalls. Okay? Literally, you execute the file, it unpacks it, file runs. Take this, use it on any malicious program. Chances are the antivirus signature is not going to catch it. And, of course, from a forensics perspective, you're not going to have anything that will match up with it either. Pretty cool stuff. Problem from the forensic community's perspective is that it is free, and there are tons of packages out there to do this somewhat malicious activity. I mean, there's not too many good reasons for needing a packer. Yes, they do provide some degree of compression. So, of course, if you've got a small drive, et cetera, you want to really reduce things down, or you left all the debug code in the software, running a packer on it does make things nice and compact. But, again, it does just munge anything that antivirus could find for it.
Also, if antivirus incorrectly identifies a file.
Yeah. Yep. Now, binders are a whole other thing. Binders are really cool. When I first started learning about network security, of course, I learned it from the aspect of breaking it first. If you're going to learn the good on anything, you've got to learn the bad. That's why I'm doing a lot of study on anti-forensics. I'm learning forensics. So in trying to learn about the dark side of the web, I ended up downloading a ton and a half of, we'll call it, I don't want to call them hacking tools, vulnerability assessment tools, okay? I downloaded a bunch of vulnerability assessment tools and just Trojaned the hell out of my box. All right, I finally got to the point where I started doing it using VMware because I got tired of rebuilding the box. The bottom line is they're using binders on a lot of this stuff today. I mean, I've done a lot of conferences where I speak on script kiddie tools and all that fun stuff, and I always forewarn everyone, now don't go back to your home tonight and go downloading these tools or loading them on your corporate network to try to get a handle on how they work, because chances are you're bringing a Trojan in with it. It's going to be phoning home, immediate backdoor, back into your network, et cetera, et cetera. Binders are pretty cool. If you want to play with binders to get a better handle on them, I found a really neat site, TrojanFrance.com. Has just an unbelievable number of Trojan programs, and on top of that, an unbelievable number of binders to go along with them. Now, surely you guys remember Silk Rope? Anybody remember Silk Rope? Okay. 2 or 3 people. Silk Rope was the binder that was primarily used with, what the hell was the name of that old Trojan again? Yeah, back orifice. That was just they had the best names for everything that went along with that. All of the add-ins were called butt plugs. I mean, it was just cool, really cool. But Silk Rope 1.0 was one of the first binders that was made available out on the net, and it was used so that you could attach, back orifice to other programs. So you would take a hacking tool, you would attach back orifice to it using Silk Rope. Some bonehead 13-year-old is going to go to Dad's PC and download this hacking tool, or maybe it's going to be a tool for viewing porn videos. There was a lot of that used out there too. And he would immediately be setting up back orifice on Dad's PC. All right, you get that back channel into Dad's PC, surf that VPN tunnel into the office, and just have a field day. Tons of binders out there. Again, the difference between a packer and a binder: a packer is simply going to munge up the signature by compressing. All right, the program itself. A binder is actually going to combine the two programs together. So when you do the install of the one tool, you're actually installing the tool plus a Trojan. Pretty interesting stuff. Now, Metasploit. Everybody is very familiar with the Metasploit project itself. Did you know that they have a full implementation of an anti-forensics project? Yes. Vinny Liu, I've talked with him a number of times on email. I found some bugs in some of the tools, and he's put them on his to-do list. Had a number of good conversations with him. He's a real straight-up guy, somewhere out in Arizona. But he's put together a nice set of demonstrations on what possibly could be done in an anti-forensics environment through the Metasploit project. One of the more interesting ones is a program called TimeStomp. All right? Again, these are just beginning to roll out there. It doesn't use the standard Windows system calls to overwrite the Mac times. It in fact uses it uses NT-query and NT-set information to write the new times. The GUI for it, well, there is none. It's all command line, and you tend to get into a little bit of trouble with syntax. He's got like 4 or 5 different tools out there, and each tool seems to be using a different syntax. So what I've done in the presentation is I put the proper syntax and given you examples of how it is used so you can kind of get it right and you don't have to keep emailing Vinny to figure out what the hell he was thinking when he wrote this thing in the first place. But it's really pretty cool. With TimeStomp, it's got a number of really interesting options. You can choose to do single actions like last written, last accessed, created, all that fun stuff to alter the times. And then it's got another option. It's the -B option. We're going to talk about that at length in just a minute. This is the specific syntax that is incorrect, by the way. Yes?
Why did you make the distinction in just the set file type?
Vinny made a big deal out of it, about not using the standard Windows interface for changing it. Perhaps there's a way of somehow figuring out that someone accessed set file time, all right, to change the times on it, so that if the last command that was run on that machine was set file time, perhaps it's a giveaway. I don't know. Again, I'm a practitioner. I'm certainly no expert. Hope nobody thinks that they got an expert up here talking on the subject. I'm just trying to brief you on what I've learned. I just think it's that important. Again, the syntax is incorrect. We do correct it in showing the use of it. Now, this would be TimeStomp run against a directory shown in FTK. Well, actually, this is before I ran it. So again, if you take note of the timestamps, all right? Now, running TimeStomp against that directory, re-imaging, and bringing it back into FTK, that's what happens to my timestamps. All right? It kind of munges them, sets them at a fairly arbitrary date, but it's a bit of a problem. This is using an option called the -B option. It's referred to as the Craig option. It catches everything within the directory and munges the dates for the whole directory. So you don't have to do it line by line. You can do the entire directory and everything underlying it. So for FTK, all of the dates are now incorrect. It's changed every date to a date that's fairly, well, meaningless since they're advanced in time. All right, that's what, 2009, I believe there? Yeah. Yeah, Your Honor, I wasn't even working there in 2009. How can this be correct? They're not my files. All right? Yeah, yes, yeah, which is also pretty cool. Then, then we get into NCase. NCase has a bigger problem with it yet. And Vinny alerted NCase to this well over a year or so ago. Here we have NCase prior to running TimeStomp. Again, I took the original partition that we imaged. And then I ran TimeStomp on it, re-imaged, and brought it back into NCase. Take a look here at what happens with NCase. There are no timestamps. Okay? That's the problem. I heard there's some talk that it will be corrected in a future version. A new version of NCase was released like 2 weeks ago. And to be quite honest with you, I didn't have time to rerun it, but I most certainly will over the next couple of weeks. And if you'll email me, I'll let you know if the problem is still there. But again, how do you explain that in court? Yes, you can't, which just blows it right out. So, a lot of the point of what I'm getting at here is we need better forensic tools. All right? You've got maybe 3 commercial vendors out there today selling this stuff. You can always fall back to autopsy and, TCT and all that fun stuff. I didn't bother running it on that, but most of the people out there today are doing point-and-click forensics. They're relying on access data as FTK. They're relying on NCase. Well, if you are, in this case closed. This guy's walking. All right? There are no timestamps to tie it to it. Of course, Windows Explorer, pre-timestomp, Windows Explorer, post-timestomp. They're gone. Okay? It's really cool. And again, this is using that -B option They refer to it as the Craig option. It gets every single file in the directory. You'll notice, though, that it did not change the timestamps on the directories themselves. All right? Again, these are early tools. They will get better, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective. But again, it is a major issue. Now, Slacker. Slacker's cool, but I don't know why anybody bother using it. What Slacker does, essentially, is it allows you to hide data in Slack space, but what's cool about it is not only will it encrypt the data, it'll push it across multiple files within a given directory, which is kind of neat. Literally, then, you can take a key, and the key happens to be a given file. Right? You're not hand-entering the key here. You give it a file name. It uses that file, then, as the key. It chooses another file to use as a map. And then it distributes all of the data across multiple files and maintains a map within another file that you've given it. Very interesting concept. But again, if you're going to hide data, there's simpler ways to do it. Okay? Much simpler ways to do it. But it is kind of neat. The syntax on it was incredibly difficult to use. I went back and forth with Vinny a dozen times, and we finally got it figured out. That's where we found the bugs in this particular program, and he is going to take care of them in a future release. But, of course, when you get a copy of the presentation, that's the proper syntax to use to not only hide data given a specific file as a key, given a specific file as a map. And, by the way, on the map, you've got to have at least 1,024 bytes available to store the map, or it just blows up. So bear that in mind. And, again, how to pull it back out. So, yeah, it's cool, but who the hell's going to use it? I mean, if a bad guy wants to hide data, there are much simpler ways to do it. Much simpler ways. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting. They have not released a copy of this. It's called Transmorgify, currently being worked on. What Transmorgify is supposed to do is automatically, on the fly, modify the signatures for a given file set. You can take all of your executables and make them look like JPEGs within EnCase. You can take whatever you'd like and make it look like anything else, and it supposedly will covertly maintain a database knowing what it has modified so that you can go right back and quickly change everything back to what it really is. So even if you're looking at the magic bits or magic bytes within the file itself, chances are they're going to be wrong. So as EnCase, or for that matter, anything such as FTK, goes through and you tell it, okay, I want to see every JPEG on this machine because I'm going after a guy that's suspected of kitty porn. If he's run Transmorgify, you will never find those JPEGs. They may just simply be Word documents. And again, they're not going to be flagged because he's actually gone in and modified those magic bytes where it actually appears to be the correct file type. All right? It's pretty cool. He didn't give me any date line of when it's going to be out there. There is a little bit of blurb on the website that it's coming, but this is just going to blow the hell out of any forensic tool's ability to, go out and grab specific file types. It's going to be a real pain in the ass. But Transmorgify is a pretty cool name, too. I kind of like that. Sam Juicer. Everybody here, I'm sure, has used PWDump. Okay? You want to go out and grab a password set or a hash set out of a SAM file. You would use PWDump, but it's noisy as hell. Now, I don't know why specifically this is part of the Metasploit framework for anti-forensics. It should just be part of the Metasploit framework, period. But SAM Juicer allows you to literally go in and inject code into ASS and do the work of PWDump without making the noise that typically surrounds it. Supposedly, people have been able to identify the signatures that would typically be used with PWDump and alert to the fact that it has been run. With SAM Juicer, there are no signatures. So it's kind of cool. Again, I mean, God, with the advances that have been made in the last couple of years here, I mean, rainbow tables, that was fun. I mean, passwords are obsolete. I work for a security company, and they're focusing now on going after banks with their two-factor authentication because of the new recommendations that came out where all banking has to move to two-factor authentication by the end of 2006. And
don't be owning my space, boy.
Well, I'll stay out of your space. But the bottom line here is I think they're being stupid because why go after just banking? You look at the big picture, anybody who's running Windows is vulnerable. So you go after anyone in a large Windows enterprise because it's foolish to think that you can't crack any Windows passwords in typically about 2 hours or less. I played around with rainbow tables myself, again, for research purposes only, mind you. I'm a CISSP. I have to pre-qualify that. I created a database. It was about... Do what?
It's a joke, sorry.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I hear you. Uh-huh.
Don't hold it against him.
There you go. I test well, yes. The bottom line is that I created every letter and number, worked out to be about 4 gig, fits very, very nicely on a DVD. And one of the guys I screw around with this stuff with naturally started using symbols in his password because I sent him back his other password, and I couldn't crack it. So I went ahead and created the bigger file. It took like 5 months on a dual Xeon server. But I've got every letter, number, and symbol. And if I'm not mistaken, it's around 18 or so gig. It's pretty big. Won't fit on a DVD, but fits very, very nicely on my MP3 player. So it's still quite portable. And in fact, I understand that somebody's got it just sitting out on the net now. And there's a package called Remote Exploit. You may or may not have heard of it. Remote Exploit has a utility that actually works with a web-based set of rainbow tables files. So when you're trying to, crack the password, you don't have to have anything with you, literally. Just bring in a copy of Remote Exploit on a CD and all bets are off. You've got to have internet access, mind you. But again, passwords are obsolete. Sam Juicer's cool, but again, there's so many methodologies for just obliterating a Windows network. God, it's a bit crazy. Now, future work coming out of Vincent Liu and the Metasploit anti-forensics project, NTFS change journal modifications, additional secure deletion work. He's finally going to provide documentation on the programs he's got up there to date, which would be kind of nice. I was scratching my head for a couple of weeks trying to learn how to work with this stuff. Browser log manipulation, which will be pretty cool, especially in light of the presentation we heard just a couple of minutes ago. File metadata modification and NTFS extended attribute work. So again, Metasploit anti-forensics project, definitely worth a look. Very, very good stuff currently out there, and it looks like some pretty good stuff coming through. Now, it's funny, when I did this for the cybercrime conference, it had about 3/4 of the content I've got here up in Atlanta. Vinny made this big deal about keep my name the hell off of this thing. Just leave it to Metasploit project, which I thought was pretty funny because he does want to, promote the company, but such is life. He's a partner in Sachin Liu. Now, advanced anti-forensics. This stuff, quite honestly, gets a bit above my head, but I thought it was interesting, and I thought I'd point it out to you. There's supposedly something out there called MOSDEF. Anybody heard of it? Stands for most definitely. Allows you to literally compile retargetable, position-independent code that will run within, let's say, a buffer overrun. So you can generate this code that will run within the buffer overrun so nothing ever has to hit the hard drive. That's kind of cool. If it doesn't hit the hard drive, there's really no evidence that it ever ran. Don't know enough about it to play with it myself, but there you go. Take a look at it. It looks pretty cool. To be able to write code that will run within an exploited process itself is pretty cool. URL is there, and again, I'll most certainly get you guys a copy of the presentation so you can go out and take a look at it. That is going to be another defining moment within forensics. No longer having to touch the hard drive to get the exploit on the machine is pretty cool. Now, on the Linux side, there are tons of tools. RuneFS, ability to hide data within bad blocked inodes. WaffenFS, hide data within a spoofed journal file system. This is actually pretty cool. This I have played with. I was up in New York, and the guys from Smart, Andy Rosen, had a class going on up there, and we met and had a few drinks, and I gave him an image with a spoofed journal file, and he really had to give it a second look to be able to catch it, but it is pretty cool. KYFS, I love the names on this stuff, too. Hides data in null directories. Well, if you're going to hide something in a null directory, why not call it KY? Most people use it anyway. Data Mule, hide data in reserved space. In other words, hiding data in space that forensic tools aren't going to look in. This stuff has been out there for years, and the forensic product vendors are not addressing the issues. So again, hopefully my speaking here is going to help. Maybe it's going to spark somebody to start writing better tools, or at minimum start harassing these guys that are writing the tools to, hey, this stuff is out there. Maybe you want to consider doing a little something about it. Now, in conclusion, for the little track here on anti-forensics, is a little quote. Actually found this on the web, gave it a little bit of a modification, but I sincerely believe this today. The tools freely available on the public internet for the cybercriminal to cover his or her tracks and to hide data have clearly rendered file systems, the integrity of them, as no longer being an accurate log of malicious system activity. I mean, if we don't do something and do something in the very, very near future, a lot of what we call forensics today is going to get thrown right out the window. These guys are going to just walk. I mean, the tools are definitely out there to wreak havoc with the investigator. And again, it's going to call literally anything they can do questionable. There's enough slime balls out there on the opposite side of the coin here that are going to be bringing these tools into court. Hey, there's a possibility that this tool was used and my client really didn't put those files on that PC. What is it? The Trojan defense? Been used successfully here in the U.S. a couple of times. It's just amazing, amazing. And with that, I wrap it up. I hope you found it interesting and informative. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to give them a shot. Yes? No questions? Cool. All right, cool.
Well, I guess I don't understand your position on steganography because to me it's the same thing as encryption. If it's done right, you can't distinguish the bad data from the good data.
My position on it is somewhat, maybe it's a little lightweight for you here, but where I came from on this was, I'm at this law enforcement conference. It was Secret Service down in Miami, and they're just making this absolutely huge deal. I mean, everybody's trying to tie Al-Qaeda to everything today. And they were just convinced that Al-Qaeda is going to be using steganography to issue commands to their operatives, and we've got to buy the tools now to try to thwart the use of steganography. And I just didn't buy into it. So, yeah, possibly, it is a great tool. It's a great way to go. But just the whole push that the Secret Service was giving was just, to me, totally unwarranted.
Paul, I think really, maybe, if I can do this, what he was trying to talk about was the difference between encryption and steganography.
There is no difference. There really is no difference. I mean, done right, it would be totally undetectable. I fully agree with that. But my whole issue was that, you got these guys down in Miami that are literally going to create a new industry for software programmers to write anti-steganography programs. And it's as bad as the security we have at airports today. I mean, it's completely useless. Absolutely useless. We're all safe from old ladies with knitting needles, all right? But that's about all we're safe from. I think steganography is going down the same road. I just think that steganography as a field, wonderful, great tool. It's got great potential, but there's no evidence of its use for malicious purposes by Al-Qaeda, and I just don't understand why they're just going so nuts about it. Other questions? There you go. Well, I'll tell you what. I was at a presentation in Myrtle Beach. I was doing a firewall track, and Marcus actually did a presentation in front of all these three-letter guys. This is, what the hell's the name of it now? God, it's a forensics and security summit in Myrtle Beach. It's there every year. Forget the name of it off the top of my head, but it's all these guys that make their living through Homeland Security, and Marcus spent an hour just bashing the hell out of Homeland Security. And the bottom line is all it did was fatten up everybody's budgets. And we're really getting no benefit from it.
Not investing the money appropriately.
Exactly. Well, I had a talk with a friend of mine. He's with the Secret Service. It wasn't John, but one of the guys that works for John, and he's telling me that their emphasis on white-collar crime has been cut in half in the last year. And they're having to concentrate so much of their effort on cyber terrorism and terrorism in general that they don't have the resources to investigate white-collar crime. So it's just amazing. And now's the time to play, I guess, right? There you go. Maybe now's the time to roll out the tool that we just talked about a couple of minutes ago. Okay, cool. Any other questions?
Comment more than a question. There was an x86 tool called, I think, Partition Star, and it was actually designed as kind of a multi-boot tool. It was designed to allow more than 4 primary partitions in the partition table. What it did to accomplish that is it would actually remove OS entries from the partition table. As silly as that was, I found that it thwarted a lot of the automated forensic investigations because even though it did nothing to obscure these data in the file system, it obscured the presence of a partition on the drive itself.
Yeah.
But again, unfortunately, a lot of the major commercial forensics packages don't look for data or don't look for partitions that aren't listed in the partition tables.
Yeah. Well, Andy Rosen with Smart, he had a little bit of fun with that at this thing in New York because he went ahead and created the partition table, made a couple of manual entries to it, and it was part of the practical that the students were supposed to do was to run through this image, and they were supposed to return a report to Andy and Farmer Dude, the guy that always helps Andy out. And what Andy didn't want to happen was have these guys take these images and go back to their offices and run FTK on them, which is point and click, or run NCase on them. So he chose to format the partition in a manner that FTK and NCase couldn't even see it. You couldn't boot it, yet his program would. So, yeah, that was done manually in his case.
One of those $12.95 does an amazing amount.
Oh, yeah. And again, my whole point here is that the providers of the tools that we've got out there today commercially just aren't addressing these issues. I mean, again, Vinny told NCase well over a year ago about the problem with the timestamps. And to date, I haven't seen a resolution of that. It's like they're just not hearing it. Not hearing it. Any other questions? Well, cool, and for me, that's a wrap. Thank you very much.